On Friday, I found myself in an airport, this airport to be exact. I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was scheduled on the last flight from Raleigh to Newark. Some folks spent yesterday in a social justice retreat that began at 9:30 in the morning, and so it was very important that I board a plane that departed Raleigh, North Carolina, and landed in Newark, New Jersey on Friday evening. But as I arrived, a familiar scene unfolded. I've made this trip quite a few times. I looked at the board to see which gate I was headed to, and I saw a red blinking message next to my flight information. Now, this red blinking message in and of itself should not have been a cause for alarm. It said I was only 25 minutes delayed. But here's the thing about the last flight out of Raleigh, North Carolina to Newark, New Jersey on a Friday night. In my experience, 25 minutes can somehow magically become 50 minutes. And 50 minutes can somehow magically become 2 hours. And 2 hours can somehow magically become the next day. So while I looked at this blinking red light of a 25-minute delay, I started contemplating what I should do. Should I really just go and get a meal because I knew 25 minutes was going to be 50 minutes? I thought about plowing through some emails and connecting to the wireless network. I thought about the chair massage that was in the next photo. And then I realized it was just about 7 p.m. and at least 2 of my children were getting ready for bed. And given that a 25-minute delay can turn into a 50-minute delay, can turn into 2 hours, it was probably best for me to call home and to say goodnight. So Anne-Marie, my wife, picked up the phone right away. "Hey, honey," she said. "Hey, can I talk to the kids? I've got a 25-minute delay." Yes. So Kirk got on the phone. "Hey, honey," he said. My 2 older children, the twins, call me honey because when they were little, I traveled so much that I would often call to check in at bedtime, and Anne-Marie would say, "Oh, hi, honey, yeah, I'll put him on the phone." And one time I came home from one of my trips and they exclaimed, "Honey's here." And so I'm not mommy, I'm honey. Any rate, "Hey, honey," Kirk says, "I saw a really big spider today. Do they have big spiders where you are?" "Yeah, really big, like big, big." "Yeah, I think so, Kirk." "Oh, good. Do you think you can catch one?" No, I don't think so, Kirk." "Well," he said abruptly, "honey, the sky is blue here right now, but I gotta get going because the sunsets are coming." "Oh, honey?" "Yeah, Kirk?" "Are the sunsets coming where you are?" "They are," I said. And then it occurred to me. This was an opportunity to tell him something he might not realize. "Kirk," I said, "you know, if you go and look at the window right now and you see that sun, you're looking at the same sun that I'm looking at." You could hear the electricity in his brain. "You're looking at the same sun that I'm looking at, honey?" Ella started vying for the phone. "Shh, Ella, we are waiting for the sunsets to come." And so that's what I did with my delay. Kirk and I on the phone, I found a corner of a beautiful window where my plane should have been. But instead, I watched the sunsets come with my son. There's a story in the Hebrew Bible, one that you have probably heard in some variation. It's the story of Moses, really, but this is before Moses is Moses. At this point in the story, he's just some guy who has told his father-in-law that while he's away, he will go ahead and take care of his flock. And so he's near this mountain in the story where we find Moses, and he's taking care of the flock, feeding the dogs, picking up the mail so it doesn't pile up. And while he's doing all of this, he happens to notice that there's this shrub and it's on fire. And so Moses stops what he's doing, the middle of the chores, and he stares at it. And because he stops long enough, he notices that this shrub isn't only on fire, but it's not being consumed by the flames. It keeps on burning, but not burning up. Now, this is where the story gets wild, right? And the rest we kind of know. Moses hears a voice who tells him to take off his shoes because he's on holy ground. He obliges. And Moses' entire life path is altered, including the path of all those that he loves and knows. An entire story of liberation and struggle and triumph and tragedy will follow this moment. My friend Reverend Tracy Blackman gave me a new insight on this old familiar tale. You know, I had always assumed that this burning bush, as it is often referred to, was especially created for Moses, who had a particular and very personal call, right? I tend to like the idea of particular and personal callings. Yet when you read the story, nowhere does it say that the bush was set aflame especially for Moses. In fact, the story details somehow that God is almost like watching this unfold, watching, just the everyday people going down the sidewalk, and suddenly Moses goes over to the burning bush and stares at it long enough to notice that it hasn't been consumed. He pauses to wonder. And this is where my friend Tracy asked me, Robin, how many other folks do you suppose just walked on by that burning bush? Who were too busy, too occupied, too certain of what was important, too bored, too something to notice. The story, she said, is actually telling us something else. Remember, she told me, Moses is not the figure you would think would change the world. He has a speech impediment. He has serious anger management issues. He consistently questions his own abilities and the veracity of the vision for liberation. But there it is. Moses is the one who noticed, who paused long enough, and who had the good sense to take off his shoes. The sunsets are coming. As some of you know, about a week and a half ago, I was called to El Paso to be part of a Moral Monday in the Borderlands. It was about immigrant rights. El Paso has truly been the target of decades of policies that now suddenly have been combined with a ferocity of white supremacy that has taken the safest town in America to be torn asunder by violence. This beautiful town, decade after decade, has exemplified the richness and the kindness of borderlands, the permeability of our humanity. You know, when hundreds of immigrants were released without any warning or preparation several years ago from a detention facility in El Paso just days before Christmas, the entire town came together, found food, found clothing, found housing, hosted entire families, and opened their doors. That is El Paso. But El Paso has also been the place that Steve Bannon has held rallies and fundraising to build a giant wall on private land, a monument to white supremacy. El Paso has been the target of our own president's rhetoric again and again and again. And El Paso in just the last year has seen a militia rise up along the border, has seen white nationalist rallies in their town. So it was just 2 days after I returned from El Paso, having spoken and borne witness to the beauty and the struggle there, that I got the text message and turned on the news. For the last week, I have been unable to produce any words. I wasn't sure there were going to be words for this morning. At first, I kept trying to force the words, because I'm one who deals in words, whose life, frankly, depends on words and the production of them. And when I couldn't find words of my own, I went to the words that I have always drawn from, bits of scripture, the teachings of a mystic beloved by my grandmother, poems I memorized in grade school, words from a mentor. But they all sounded like clanging cymbals. I began in the words of Toni Morrison, who's quoted in your order of service, not to fear the magnificent, the awe-inspiring, the birds as big as cows, or even loving bears, but to fear the pathless, the wordless places. That this sorrow, this pain, even this numbness was going to overtake me. A very good friend said to me, Robin, you don't always have to have words. Stop. Just stop. So seeing no alternative, I did. I stopped trying to pretend that I knew what to do next. I stopped trying to distract myself with TV shows, with a glass of wine, with anything I could find. I just stopped. I stood in that airport terminal wandering, really. It could have been a 2-hour delay. Wandering, wordless, until my own 5-year-old son helped me find my way back. That night when the plane finally landed in Newark 5 minutes before the next day, the moon shone over the water, and because of the way that we were landing with a little bit of turbulence, dipping left and then right, left and then right, it made it look as if the moon was dancing on the water. I pressed my face to the glass of the window and I smiled. And then I wept. And wonder of wonders, somehow, I felt better. Nothing had changed. The world was still wrought with the same objective horrors as just hours before. No one had been resurrected from the dead. No new legislation had been unearthed. No great reconciliation or restoration or moment of healing had erupted. Nothing had changed, but I, wonder of wonders, had changed. There is no formula for how to find mystery and wonder. You cannot plan or produce it. You can sit for hours beneath a star-filled landscape and still go to bed empty. But the next night, you can suddenly encounter a fawn on your drive home, as you have done maybe dozens of times before, but somehow this one visits you as the holy, as goddess, as mystery, as a burning bush, as something in you that you had forgotten was in you. There's no formula to bring wonder into your life, but there is a way, beloved, that you can ensure it never touches you. If you plow ahead, if you insist on controlling and creating a pace that gives you no place to rest or dance, you can be assured that wonder will never cross your threshold. She will keep to her corners, her glimmers. She will go unnoticed. The signal for me when I have shut out wonder is that I stop listening to music. Everyone, I think, has their signal, right? When they have closed off, when wonder can't find a space. I have a friend who says it's when she stops running. I have another who says that they suddenly forget to meditate, that they can't even stand silence. It makes their skin crawl. This past Wednesday, we had a staff retreat, and everyone was asked to name a series of songs to match to various emotions. I then had some of our social justice leaders do this at a retreat yesterday. It's an icebreaker, right? So you name a song that you associate with a breakup. You name a song that you associate with happiness. You name a song that you associate with your comeback kid nature, right? As we explained the directions, though, we had the hilarious experience of someone who shall remain unnamed, Tuli Patel, our executive director, who looked blankly and then did the thing that Tuli does where she looks like she's waving something and you're not sure, but it doesn't smell good to her. And she said, I don't have songs. I don't have music. Contrary to Tuli, we do have music. What? I said, Tuli, you don't have music? You don't allow music to stir you, to touch you, to move inside of you? You're unaffected by the sounds of beauty? It quickly became a tease Tuli moment, but soon she was in the midst of naming music for various emotions and breaking the ice, so to speak. Although she did produce a bit of sarcasm by saying her favorite song was The Sound of Silence. Whether music, visual art, a novel, dance, we each have our own way of seeking and allowing into our beings and our lives wonder, and we each have that same signal when it has been shut off, shut away. And I don't mean here because of a clinical condition, but I'm talking about when we shut off because of our own pace. Because we have allowed in our bodies to inhabit the very forces we are fighting or fleeing. In the Hebrew Bible and the Christian scriptures, you hear of people having spirits possessing them. What's that about? I wonder sometimes if it's a metaphor, a way of describing the small ways that we can each not be taken by something supernatural, but be taken, misaligned, disoriented, and even used by the very essence of the forces we are fighting or fleeing. I worry so much lately in this political context that those stoking the flames are getting exactly what they want. Even in me. I look at the exhaustion and the rage and I wonder, how can we save the world if we've not savored it? How can we long to hold to what is good, to move toward what is beloved if we cannot find the time to pause and love the goodness within and around us? Alice Walker puts it well. I think us here, she says, to wonder, to ask, and that in wondering about the big things and asking about the big things, you learn about the little ones almost by accident. But you never know nothing more about the big things than you start out with. The more I wonder, she says, the more I love. This is the path mystics tell us about, of pausing to see what was always there, the day stars now visible. Not as a personal and particular calling to Moses, but as an ever-present bath of mystery and awe. Sometimes we are taught that the most faithful thing we can do is to wait, or to pause, as Reverend Emily taught us last week. If we are to be saved, not in the sense of our souls from an otherworldly damnation, we're still universalists, but truly saved from the hells present here on earth, we are compelled then to discover the paradise in the midst of suffering, the beauty present amongst the brokenness, and the awe even in the awful. By this we are saved from the origin of the word salve, healed, wholehearted once more, waiting for the sunsets to come, recalling that we are here yet, beneath one brilliant sun that burns bright still and is not yet consumed.